and the Senate wouldn't go for it because he was a Democratic. And especially in his last year, his last couple of years of being president, they really didn't want to cooperate with anything. They wanted to wait until the next president, hoping it would be Trump. They didn't want to see Hillary get the job, because then they'd have at least 4 years of dealing with more Democratic policies and to push that the Congress is the majority of congressmen and women are Democrats. So they have the numbers in the Congress, but the majority of senators were Republican. So there you have it. Politics that I had no plan on expounding on, but they get me all the time on Facebook with these nonsensical posts that are just not true, just not based in any facts at all. Just like the whining and crying about widespread voter fraud, which is just not true. Just not true and nonsensical. Trump has convinced his base of idiots that the election was stolen from him, when really it's him who's trying to steal the election by pretending like it was somehow stolen from him because people voted for Joe Biden. The election is not stolen from you just because people vote for the other guy. It was not widespread voter fraud. It was registered American citizens, registered voters voting for the other guy. They just didn't want you to be president anymore. So they voted for the other guy. That's not stealing an election. He's trying to steal it by filing all these motions in the courts and with the Supreme Court, which was struck down, which we will get more into. But first, we're going to pause. We'll be right back right after this.
You're listening to a man who's so sexy it's completely ridiculous. Mr. Anthony Scott Dunford. Yummy.
All right. Before we went to break, we was talking about politics. It's all politics and pandemic anymore these days, which that won't be forever. It'll pass. Well, maybe the politics might not pass. That's been going on since before any of us who are on this podcast or listening to this podcast, or before we even had podcasts. That's been going on for many years. But anyway, we was talking about the president trying to steal the election. Now, he just got struck down. A lawsuit that they had filed that went to the Supreme Court. That is the fastest thing I've ever heard, going to the Supreme Court. But that lawsuit was struck down by the Supreme Court. It had no merits. They didn't even want to hear the case, because once they reviewed the lack of evidence that they had, they decided not to even hear the case. The Supreme Court. So Trump is really just making a fool out of himself in the courts, but he's trying everything he can, and he's being advised of is a possibility that we could do this, or we could try to steal it that way or this way. There was a lawsuit filed by the Attorney General, or was it the legislator in Texas, and 17 other states and 126. I can't even believe they have so many congressmen, for one. I mean, there's only 50 states. How many congressmen do you possibly need? But 126 Republican congressmen jumped onto this lawsuit to say that some of the other states where Trump lost should be overturned, basically, is what they were saying, which is nonsensical because Texas and these other 17 states, they have nothing to do, very little to do with what's going on in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, all the swing states that Trump lost in. They wanted the vote overturned, which that's the one that the Supreme Court said no. You really got a lot of nerve, Texas, trying to tell all the other states what to do and how to run their election. Worry about yourself, jackass. That's really what the Supreme Court was saying. They didn't use those terms and those exact words, but that's really what it was coming down to. They were telling Texas, sit down and shut up. You don't need to be trying to file any lawsuits, trying to tell every other state what they can and cannot do and how to run their election. So that lawsuit didn't go anywhere. But the latest news is that Homeland Security computer system was hacked by Russia. This is what has happened here as of late. And again, President Trump has nothing to say about it because Putin is his boy. Putin, is Trump's pal, I guess. But anyway, Russian intelligence, they've hacked into the Homeland Security. I don't know what information they was able to see or steal, but they've hacked into Homeland Security. It was detected that the hack happened and it came from Russia. So the Russians have hacked into our Homeland Security systems online. Don't know what's going to happen with that, but that is something that has happened, and President Trump was asked about it and he didn't have anything to say about it. I don't see all the stuff that happens with Russia. He just won't say anything about it. He'll just talk about voter fraud and Hunter Biden for some reason. He's obsessed with Hunter Biden. That is not funny. Hunter Biden probably thinking, man, would you just leave me alone, please? I know you wanted to get something on my dad, but it's too late now. The votes have already been cast, my boy. It's too late now. Investigating Hunter Biden is not going to get you anywhere. They're not going to overturn the election because you've investigated Hunter Biden, Mr. Presidezi. So Hunter Biden is actually being investigated. The DOJ, Department of Justice, is investigating. It seems almost so stupid that it's funny that they're investigating Hunter Biden because they've been so obsessed with Hunter Biden. Oh my God! I mean, I just only thought that they were going to, they were obsessed with him before the election, so they could try to use that to sway people into voting for Trump. Not after the election is over. You still investigating the man? I mean, come on. Stop it with this nonsense. Hunter Biden. And to hear Rudy Giuliani, who apparently is getting over COVID, to hear Rudy Giuliani talk about Hunter Biden is just, I mean, it's hilarious how this man is willing to make a fool out of himself by saying things that are completely ridiculous. The rude dog, Giuliani. He just makes a fool out of himself almost every time he gets on TV nowadays, because he's saying something that's so off base and so not true. Just so, I mean, he just so far into something that's just not true. It's like a fictional story that he's made up that could be turned into a thriller, espionage, you know what I'm saying? And Hunter Biden in the middle of it, and rigged election, you know. Just, they probably blame that on Hunter Biden too, if they could. Hunter Biden, didn't you rig the election? Tell us, Hunter Biden, how'd you rig the election? You know, so the rude dog, Giuliani, probably got the cocktail that President Trump got when he got COVID. Or maybe he's got the vaccine. Speaking of the vaccine has gone out. The vaccine has been shipped to Columbus, Ohio, and New York City, and many other places where the doctors and nurses of different hospitals, large hospitals, have started receiving doses of the vaccine. But now they've got some kind of a mix-up with the Pfizer vaccine. And that mix-up is the White House is trying not to have the Pfizer vaccine distributed as much as the Moderna vaccine, because they made the deal with Moderna, not with Pfizer. Pfizer developed this vaccine on their own because they're a drug company, and that's what drug companies do. Pfizer is the big drug company that creates Viagra. So, but that's not that's not the only thing they do. It's not like your COVID vaccine is going to make you, get an erection. They don't mix those two together. Pfizer doesn't, but that's the company that creates Viagra. But anyway, they created their COVID vaccine on their own. Moderna was a drug company that was part of the Operation Warp Speed. They had 5 drug companies that the government, President Trump administration and task force, they commissioned these drug companies to work on this virus as much as they possibly could until they get a vaccine, which Pfizer ironically ended up having their vaccine ready before any of the 5 companies that were part of the Operation Warp Speed. So, because the president has made a deal with these 5 drug companies, they don't want to deal with Pfizer. But Pfizer had the vaccine first, so they didn't have a choice, really. So, but now that Moderna has their vaccine is ready, they're trying to use Moderna vaccine as much as possible, because the government is actually buying the vaccine, these doses, from the drug company, and they had a deal with Moderna. They don't want to deal with Pfizer, but people need the vaccine. That's the problem. So, again, the vaccine now, the distribution of it is caught up in politics, because the president is